I'm pretty excited about everything going on in here. You can see some spinach, some grass. It is what it is. I haven't weeded in forever. Our strawberry plant down here, it has so many strawberries on it. And then let me kind of walk over here to this strawberry plant. And you can see it definitely has strawberries on it, which I'm excited about. This one looks like it's about ready. It's still a little underripe, but I'm going to go ahead and pick it because the birds haven't gotten to it. So this one's actually smaller than the first two were. But look at this. There's just such a good amount of strawberries. These are Seascape strawberries, which is really exciting. And then this week I actually got an entire order of 25 Chandler strawberries that are now planted into the ground. So I'm really excited to kind of show that off. So these strawberries, I just kind of planted everywhere into our soil. Now this soil has a lower pH because I do put Microlife acidifier into it for our blackberry plants, which are right here above the soil line. And then I do plop some squash in there, which do pretty well surprisingly. You can see these are a little yellow, but they just got transplanted, so they're a little tired. They're trying to adjust still. They're in a bit of transplant shock. But here you go is one of the Chandler strawberries here. And these were just the crowns, and I planted them in to the soil, and then they've just kind of popped right up. You just plant the crowns right below the soil. They do not have to be deep. You really want them at crown level. So they're popping up really fast. And I have a couple of them all over. I thought there was one over here. I don't see it. It could still be over here. Oh, there it is. Here it is. There it is, just popping up out of the ground. That's not it. Here it is. It looks different in the camera than it does in person. So they're popping up, but my stinky little cat's kind of getting in here and digging around and doing stuff he shouldn't. So that's an issue we've been dealing with. Look, more strawberries over there. Pretty cool. So those are all Seascape strawberries. These are our 2-year-old strawberry plants, and they always look like they die during the summertime because it's so hot, but they haven't. And in fact, another one has popped up right here where our pepper plant used to be. So I just kind of left the skeleton of my pepper plant right there and let it do its own thing, because why bother it, right? Let it grow. Strawberries have very shallow root systems, and disturbing them just doesn't go over well with a strawberry. So you can kind of see here what I mean by I grow my strawberries with my blackberry plants. And look how many blackberries are on it so far this year, and I substantially cut it back, so I'm glad that I did. It would have grown. These are Prima canes. They'll grow on both last year's canes and this year's. So what you're seeing are the berries from last year's canes, and then when it produces canes this year, it'll keep producing fruit until we get freezing weather. But other than turning a little maroon, it almost looks like they have rust, but they don't. That's just how the leaves change to almost look like they're dying even during freezing weather. They don't really lose their leaves. They pretty much pop right back, so that's pretty exciting. And since they share the same soil as the strawberries, they have the same requirements, it's so easy to kind of grow strawberries underneath it. So here's one of our Chandler strawberries, and you can see, I mean, just a couple of days in the ground, they're already popping out. They're doing so well. So I'm really impressed with these strawberries. I got them from Gurney's website and had them shipped here. And they shipped in a little bag. And inside of that bag, you open up the shipping bag from Gurney's. It's white. And you open it up and it has a clear bag with all of the roots in it for the strawberries, which are called crowns. And it also has directions for different types of plants and fertilizers and everything else you need. So it has a little pamphlet that comes with it. I thought that was really cool. So here's another one of those strawberries. And I just planted them around the existing plants. So this bed still has plants popping up that I seeded out in winter, and they're just now really coming up. And so that's fine. You can see that there's some variation here in pH because the pH is more acidic, and yet here are all these turnips that I've been growing here. Carrots, there's lettuce popping up everywhere. That's kind of what you're seeing. Stuff that I seeded a while ago, and I guess it waited for the right temperature to kind of pop up. Here's some more lettuce here. So you don't have to be exact on everything because things will grow here. Look at these carrots, and we eat the greens of the carrots too. And the color that you're seeing is so vibrant. That is the actual color. I mean, they really are that vibrant. Digging up some of the root there. Look how thick this is so far. I mean, that's amazing. These carrots are doing so well. So, but ultimately the goal is for these Chandler strawberries are types of strawberries, and they like to spread and propagate through runners. So what I'm hoping is that these 25 strawberries will propagate into hundreds of strawberries and just kind of spread out and take over this bed in a way that I won't be able to put lettuce or carrots or anything else underneath it. It will be strictly a strawberry and blackberry bed. Now the blackberries will produce pretty much 9 to 10 months out of the year because of the variety they are. They are Arkansas Traveler blackberries. They were created by Arkansas. I can't remember if it was the University of Arkansas or Arkansas State University. I want to say it's the University of Arkansas, but don't quote me 100%. Do your own research, because honestly, I get confused because I actually am a student at Arkansas State University, so I find it hard to separate what goes on at my own school versus what's actually going on in the world. It can be challenging, especially if you're a student and you spend so much time on schoolwork. Trust me, it's ridiculous. So here is one of these plants, and it is a variety of lettuce, and it has actually changed color. For the first year it was green. It's now entering its second year and fourth or fifth season with me. I planted it in this bed when I first started these beds, and this one and several others just keep popping up, and I cut it back. It's really bitter now because of the age it is, but I cut it back and I feed it to my ducks, geese, rabbits, all of them. And also if you cook it, all of that bitter flavor goes away, but it's something you can't really eat raw. Anyway, so you can see some more plants. These I think are turnips, but look at this lettuce. This is one of the lettuce that I grew last year, and it is absolutely breathtaking. And it just kind of popped up this year all by itself, so you can see where some of the plants just reseeded. And again, oh, look at this. Oh, this little bee is just going from blackberry to blackberry plant. Isn't that amazing? I love that. It's just, pollinators are everywhere, whether they're ants or honeybees or anything else, you know. And honeybees are not native, so just other people that have bees here that have kind of populated and taken over. Pretty cool. Now, unfortunately, as much as I love honey, and honeybees are really cool to have in your garden, we are having a real issue with them outcompeting native bees, and that can be really dangerous because we have a large native bee population, a huge genetic variation in native bees, and to see them being outcompeted by honeybees, which do produce yummy honey and do pollinate flowers, but the native bees fill so many other niches, so it's really heartbreaking to kind of see them, you know, losing space where they're originally from. And the downside of bees, I guess. Now, here is a giant red mustard. I'm amazed to see this pop up because I tried so hard to grow these, and none of them ever took for me. They didn't really germinate, and what did? The geese ate. And so this one's actually germinated, and it did so on its own well after I planted them, so I'm pretty excited to kind of see it pop up and see what may happen over the course of time. Now, here is one of the strawberry plants that has really popped up. Look how big it is. I mean, that's insane for it to be that tall after just a few days. You may not be able to see in the camera, but it's about 8 inches tall already. So I'm amazed at the size of Chandler strawberries bushes, and the fruit themselves are going to be significantly larger than the fruit of the seascape. Hey, I see you, Shadow. What are you doing? Stop digging in my garden, sir. My cat is just being a cat, really. He's under a year old, so he's still technically a kid. Hey, Shadow. He finds everything's a play toy for him. The garden's a play toy. Everything's fun. I'm filming him through all of the fencing. There are several trellises between me and him. He's just having the time of his life, but he loves digging in my garden. And I haven't found any feces or that he's urinating in it, but he's definitely digging up all of my plants and then just hopping and skipping around. Where do you go? There you are. That's what Shadow likes to play. So, there it is, another strawberry kind of popping up. And so there's a lot going on just in these blackberry beds, so much. I showed a video of me kind of propagating them and cutting them way back during the winter, which was about 6 weeks ago, and maybe 2 months. And now look, I mean, it's absolutely amazing how many they're producing. I hope to get them in an area that they won't kind of take over, because this is my walkway right here. So I don't want them taking over and all of the branches coming out. It makes it so hard to walk through. All these ladybugs, they just stay here. It's kind of shaky because the wind's blowing, so you can't really see them other than the red blurs on the leaves. But I'm hoping that the ones that I planted in the front of my yard, I propagated a bunch of them and planted them up there. I'm hoping that they'll take off, and because they're at the very front on the border of my yard, I won't have to trim them back as much. And I'm really excited to see how much fruit I'll get next spring without trimming back any of my bushes, because it's got to be amazing. Now, these are supposed to be a bush variety, but as you can see, we kind of let one of them vine some. And look at that, another ladybug. We should really have like a video where we just come through filming the garden and keep a total of how many lady beetles we find. But look at this. I kind of let it vine off, even though I did cut a bunch off to propagate it. And it has all of these flowers and berries. And then look at this. So this is one of my compost bins. And I actually stopped adding compost because potatoes grew inside of it. And look at this vine goes all the way around. And this plant right here is the potato that grew. I composted a potato and now I have potato plants. And my goal is, these are the yellow butter potatoes. And what I'm going to do, I think they're a German variety. What I'm going to do is, all the potatoes it produces, I'm going to hill it up, let it produce potatoes. I'm going to save all of those for seed potatoes next year and see what happens. It's going to be my little experiment. I know they may not do well. I don't care. And you have the space to do a little experimenting. It always makes things a little more interesting. You have to keep, I guess, the spark in gardening, or else you just get burnt out. It's the reality of anything that you do. Look at this. All of those flowers. So all of this vine is from that one blackberry plant. And they're supposed to be a bush, and you can actually cut them back. You know, they won't support themselves as a vine. I saw another ladybug. It's right there. They're kind of hiding. And so, look at this. It looks terrible, right? So the leaves kind of die back a little bit, but these are all falling off and they're being replaced with these gorgeous green leaves that are very healthy. Isn't that amazing? This is all one plant. Look at this. What are you doing in here? You gotta find somewhere else to lay your eggs, sir. You are not welcome here. I'm not 100% sure. Oh yeah, it is what I think it is. A stink bug nymph. As I say, there's another bug that looks like a stink bug nymph, but it's not. And it actually eats other insects, but that's definitely a stink bug nymph. And that means that squash bugs are going to be bad this year, as always. I'm gonna have to break down finally and buy some kind of protection against squash bugs because they're getting ridiculous. Look at that. It's amazing the amount of blackberries in here, and just the amount of everything. So look at this. Some butter leaf lettuce down there, right here. And I even found one of my butterhead lettuces growing way over by my neighbor's house. It somehow traveled this, well, somehow, I know how seeds travel, but the birds, the wind, there's a number of ways they get stuck to our pets, you know. We have squirrels, you never know. And it traveled all the way over next to my neighbor's house, which is really crazy. And even the cilantro, we have a ton of cilantro. Here, let me just show you real quick. Growing right here on this side of the garden when I planted all the way in the very front yard near the road. So, and this is just what didn't get weed eated yesterday. We have actual cilantro just kind of moved in and became part of our permanent yard here, which is wild. So, it's crazy how things just kind of naturalize after you've been growing stuff for a little bit. I'm so amazed by these blackberries. These are actually my 7-year-old's blackberries, and he is so in love with them. It was his idea to plant them. He comes out here and watches them. He picks the fruit off of them. So below all this will be our strawberry plants, and the goal is in a couple of years, hopefully these Chandlers will spread out, and I'll continue to buy them, to be real honest. And fill this whole bed will be a giant carpet of Chandler strawberries underneath all these blackberries. And because we eat such a ridiculous amount of fruit here, I will probably need hundreds of Chandler strawberries to be able to feed my household, not including me wanting to make jam, me having family members over, my younger siblings. At least 3 of them live close by, and they're my children's age, so they are constantly coming over, and they need some fruit to be able to eat too. You know, it's a lot when you're feeding that many kids. All 7 of them get together, but it's really cool to have them be able to hang out with my kids. They're all really close in age, and they're really close in general. They love each other so much. So on this lettuce is just like the other one I showed, and look at it. It's starting to produce a head, which I've never noticed on this variety before. And yeah, a tender head in the middle. So I'm wondering if it's going to go to seed, and that's what's going on. And honestly, I'm going to let it go to seed. And I might collect the seeds to put elsewhere, because this is a plant that's been in my garden for 2 years, and it just keeps coming back. And why not? Because I can cut it, feed it to the animals, and it comes right back, and I can cook out the bitterness and eat it. That's a win-win for me. Oh, what is this? Little buzzing thing? What are you? I can't get it on camera. It's so tiny and so fast. It almost looks like a bee, but the size of a tiny fly, smaller than a housefly. So I'm going to make a separate video on this, but I really just wanted to kind of show it off. This is a new garden bed that we're making, and I actually finally talked my husband into cutting down a tree. And then I realized quickly why we had waited so long to cut it down, even though we planned to cut it down for the last 3 years. It was a lot of work doing all of this in one day. My almost 15-year-old brother came over to help, and he's a workhorse. He's 6'2", you know, strong football player, very athletic. We were all 3 exhausted. We've definitely outlived our athlete days. I was never an athlete, but my husband was. We've outlived those days, you know, we're tired. I did hunt a lot with my dad growing up, and I ran for entertainment back then. And once you start getting a little older and have some children, you're amazed at the fact that you ran for entertainment and to calm your soul, because now you're like, I calm my soul by, you know, listening to Charles Dowding or Roots and Refuge Farm or Whispering Willow Farm for 30 minutes while I'm falling asleep at night, just to relax and drown everything out. So it's funny how things begin to change as you grow older. So this is with my 7-year-old Sam. It was his broccoli bed, and the broccoli froze to death here. We had a sudden freeze, and they weren't protected. So we planted a bunch of bulbing onions in there, and they're already starting to come up really well. There are actually a lot more that have yet to come up, so I'm excited. They're all planted in that kind of a spiral pattern, and there's still so many left in there. I see some like right here. I would say there's probably 50 onions in here, and as they get bigger, I'll pull them out but they probably won't produce substantial bulbs until June. I imagine I come out here and as close as they all are together, they'll just be like bulb after bulb, all huge giant bulbs very close together. There won't be hardly any room, so I'll just pull them out as we need them, but I think that's pretty exciting. And then of course with onions, you can kind of tell when they're ready because the tops will fall over, and all of those tops I will actually grind up and make kind of either a chopped onion, green onion kind of, or a paste out of it. So that would be really good to put in the freezer, or even dry and add to different soups as flavoring. I try to use all the vegetables. Like with our carrots, I try to take the greens and cook those, and they have a very strong flavor, so they can last a long time. Or even when they're in the winter and it's not a strong flavor, I can add them to soups or stews, or even make kind of a green pasta sauce out of them. You just got to be careful not to overdo it. So they're really good for you. They're really high in vitamin A, and I really enjoy that. So here's kind of our new garden bed, and it's between those onions and this big plant, which still is dormant, and I'm like, did it die all of a sudden during the winter? We did have some pretty bizarre weather. So this is all from the tree that was in our front yard. And then you can see the Amazon boxes. Those were just different orders. I buy groceries and stuff a lot, and so I saved all the boxes for the entire, like, Christmas. Anything I ordered, I have shoved the boxes into a container that I have outside, a giant container, so I can lay them down. And then all of this compost you're seeing is from my duck and chicken coop, so I just kind of laid it in here, and then I'll hill up soil over the top of it, like a big giant hill. And then all of the plants that I currently have inside, left onions and lettuce and whatever squash will fit, will fill out this entire bed. And so it's a pretty good, I haven't actually measured it, but I can tell you it's at least 10 feet by, I'm guessing, about 4 feet. So it worked out to use the trees that we already needed to cut down. And as you can see, there's still a lot more pieces of this tree. It's one of those that just kind of branched out. And I wish I would have recorded Larry cutting the tree down, but I was exhausted and I did not record it. So what can you do, right? Ant pile just kind of doing its own thing here. Okay, so I'm sure you recognize this if you've been here for a minute. This is where we keep our compost, where we started kind of doing a composting fence, and these are all the banana leaves, blackberries, everything else that we composted. And we use it as multiple things, because this is blackberry vine growing on one side, and this is a grape that's growing on the other side. So we definitely use it for everything, and when the grape starts producing leaves, it hides everything in the fencing. And then these are all the smaller branches from the trees that we cut down. And it's actually one tree, but it had multiple trunks. And over the years we've lived here, we've slowly had to cut down a couple of trunks because they have gotten diseased, and one that we cut down had a lot of fungus in it. And so I'm not sure what's going on with that, or exactly what's wrong with it. So you can see that we put all these boxes, because for a while I was storing my cardboard in here, and they've broken down a lot. And so it's all the various cardboard that have been used, even drink containers, boxes, you name it. And then the tree branches are kind of being stuffed in there. And some of these branches that'll get a wood chipper and chip them down, or we could leave them like this and fill this up with soil and allow it all to break down. And then we'll probably plant some kind of pretty vining plants on top of it. This won't be like your normal garden bed. It'll be something strange and unusual, but it will be worth it. And so here you can see some more sticks. And this one is definitely some of the stuff that we want to grind up, but we have to rent a chipper because we don't have one. That's one thing we can do. And then all of this are larger parts of the tree. So if the chipper we're looking at renting is about 4 inches, most of these are within that 4-inch diameter range. And our plan is to go ahead and cut down a lot of the extra branches around our yard, because we have stuff like this kind of hanging over our garden, and it needs to be trimmed back a lot. and then all of the trees that we've cut down previously. So here's a lot of the stuff that we've cut down that just kind of got set here, and stuff that even along this line has just fallen down. We had a lot of trees breaking along the lines everywhere this winter because it holds so much water and it rots out the trees back here. So we're gonna kind of break this all apart and chip up everything that we can, and then hopefully fence this off and let the animals come in here and get rid of everything else, and then eventually build it up and put a high tunnel here is our goal. We're not leaving our property anytime soon. I have some health issues of my own that I'm dealing with. My daughter and son have some pretty substantial health issues, and so we want to stay close to where we are and where we kind of know our paramedics, where we're close enough that if we need to go to downtown Houston for a medical emergency, we can, and have that dealt with. Eventually we'd like to get more property, but right now we're staying in our hometown and just kind of doing what we can with what little property that we have. And honestly, I'm pretty impressed so far with how far everything's come. But this is all of the wood that's back here, and it's a pretty substantial amount, and trees are continuing to fall down. You can see based off the amount of mud how much water we've had and how wet everything stays. And then here's some more bigger branches of trees that have just fallen off from these trees that are right here bordering our backyard. And so that's definitely an issue that we face. We really need to build things up and kind of figure things out, and then eventually when it's not as many, we'll move out these rills. And I don't know what we're gonna do back here. I bought a bunch of ryegrass and turnip seeds to plant back here, but it's stayed wetter back here than it has in previous years and held more water than ever before. So I just don't know how this is gonna work right now. It's definitely something I'm gonna have to really think about. And here, yet another tree. I mean, all this water is just rotting these trees, and it's been decades. We've lived here for almost 7 years, so it's been decades of the trees not really been taken care of and vines taking over, and I think it's finally catching up to us. And here's kind of everything from a different angle. I did think about just fencing this area off enough to let the ducks in and let them handle it, but because there's a lot of grasses in here and stuff, and I'm worried about A, them getting snake bit, and B, they're just, what if they lay a bunch of eggs all in this brush pile? It's dangerous for them. It would be crazy, you know, if they didn't hatch them. We'd have a ton of rotting eggs come summertime. It would just be a complete and total mess. So I don't think that that's going to be an option for us. But you can see we still have, this is over 14 feet wide and over 40 feet of property just in our backyard long that we're not able to use because of everything that's right here. So my hope is to chip everything up that I can, and then turn these, if I can chip all this up, then these will just hold the wood chips till I find a place to put them in my garden, which I should have plenty. I can use them for patch, use them for a mulching layer. It would do a lot of good for us, but there's plenty to chip up. And I am having surgery in about 10 days, so maybe I can talk my husband and my brother into chipping up a bunch of wood while my husband's off for that 2-week period. Our Gala apple tree is finally coming back. This is technically a zone 8 plant and we are zone 9A, but I found that the winters have gotten significantly colder over the last 5 years. So I've started planting some zone 8 plants in here to see what's going to happen. Now this tree has been trimmed back substantially because it was not grown properly, and so I cut back a lot of branches because they were overlapping. I got this from a local grocery store, so it just wasn't raised right in the nursery. And it's starting to come back, so I'm really interested to see how it'll grow and how it'll do here in our zone where it's not actually from. When I say not actually from, I mean that we don't generally have enough freeze hours to grow zone 8 plants because we are zone 9A, but I find that that's definitely changing over time. And so here is also another apple tree. This is our crab apple tree. You can kind of see all of the flowers on it. Now this is actually has a couple of small fruit, but they're so high up I can barely see them. Here is that tree stump that we cut down, and you can see it's just wild. the amount of different trees that were growing out of it. I guess it was just one tree that either branched out or a bunch of seeds that happened to drop in one area. And there are ants all in here. But isn't this cool? We're thinking that if we can get, obviously we need to get a stump grinder because we want to expand the driveway, but we want one of those tools that can kind of slice this up a little bit, because these would be perfect for stepping stones throughout the garden, and I would really love to do that. It's really cool to have different pieces. Like this tree isn't just going to get burned or sent to the dump, it's going to become a garden bed in our yard and stepping stones, and it's just kind of using everything that you have available to you, which I think is a great idea. So here is one of my favorite apple trees. I always say it's an Ian Shimmer apple, but I know that's not how to pronounce it. I have no idea how to pronounce it. I really need to figure it out. But it's a Jerusalem apple. It only requires about 100 to 150 hours of freeze time. And so this is really good for this area. And it could probably even produce apples in zone 10 easily. So we had something that was coming in and munching all of the leaves off the apple tree, but this part right here, this apple tree was actually about 10 feet tall, and last year we had a Cat 1 hurricane that came and it chopped the top off our apple tree. So that was not fun, but it's okay. It may have actually been the year, was it last year or the year before? At some point we had a Cat 1 hurricane come in and chop the top off the tree, and can't remember exactly when. And we had all the space below the tree, and you can see just how thick this tree is compared to our other trees. It's been here for about 4 or 5 years now. And it is fruit producing age. We just have not allowed it to produce fruit. I've taken all of the spurs off last year. Now some spurs are here this year, but whatever is eating at it has eaten most of them and damaged it. And I did not allow it to produce fruit the last year or two because it took such a heavy hit from that hurricane, pretty much cutting my tree in half. So that wasn't going to work for me. And I didn't want it to be hindered by trying to produce fruit when I needed to produce branches again. So I just have been taking any spurs off that I see. And below it, I have planted 5 squash plants. And I did this because my cat keeps digging up the plants, and I don't know what's actually going to survive and what's not. So I put all of these here to kind of see. And in between it, I planted all of those onion bulbs. So once the squash dies back, the onions will be perfectly fine underneath it. And these are just Calabasas squash. They're just a nice heirloom variety that's green with like grayish green stripes, and they produce really well. They start producing by about 42 to 45 days, and so this was just a really good variety and a really good option for us. So all along the front we have some blueberries, but it looks like some of them died over the winter and some made it. But in between them, I went ahead yesterday and planted these blackberry plants, and they're kind of in shock. These are just parts that had popped up out of the ground. They spread through the rhizomes of our other blackberry plants, and so I planted them in between all of the blueberries because I know that they'll grow faster. And that's why I was saying hopefully these will take over and I won't have to worry about trimming them back, and I can get a huge fruit production. And then this is another blueberry, but this one's actually still alive and it's coming back. You can see it producing tiny little flowers, and it won't hurt it to produce flowers this year because this has been in the ground for the 2nd year. This is a 3rd year plant, but these are southern high bush plants, and this particular variety, I can't remember its name, but it only gets about 4 feet tall when it's fully grown, and it's already about 2 feet tall. And then here's some more of these blackberries, and so you can kind of see here's another blueberry, and yes, it's surrounded by grass. We're actually going to come in and lay cardboard and chip around all of these, mulch them in really good. This one's not looking too good, but I just planted it yesterday, so it's probably in shock. It is starting to sprinkle right now, so they'll get watered in pretty well. And then you can see another blueberry kind of right there. So these will all get mulched in, and I think they'll be just fine. There's another blueberry. So it kind of continues that pattern, and I know it's probably hard to see in the camera because of the grass and everything else, but they're all here, and I'm hoping that these will grow up really high and kind of produce a really pretty floral border, but also obviously give us fruit. And then here's kind of the rest. Also blueberry in here, but we've put these blackberry cuttings in with it. And so here's probably one of the tallest of our blueberries, and it's just now starting to produce leaves and everything else. So I'm not sure how well these will do. Now, blueberries, like blackberries and strawberries, need acidic soil, so I'll be able to add some acidifier here and all plants will benefit. And then here's some, just the big gardens, which you guys are getting pretty used to seeing. The cilantro, the thyme, all of the big stuff. There's so much to show. I mean, it's just kind of taking over everything. This idea of this garden bed was to be a perennial garden space, and that's exactly what we have. Everything's just popping up and doing its own thing, and it's really cool to kind of not have to sow anything and it just do its own thing. All of this fennel sowed itself. So I'm impressed with how well that plan has worked, and I definitely recommend a perennial garden. But look, maybe even fennel is in our walkway now. All of these chives. I mean, so much has changed. That's amazing. So that's kind of all that's going on here right now. Now that spring's coming around, I'll have to come through in the front garden bed and show all the individual plants. There are just so many coming up, and these all just reseed on their own. So it's amazing just how well they're doing, and I'm excited to kind of continue to share that with you. The only thing that I had to seed over here this year was some of the turnip greens, and even some of those are volunteer. So I'm excited for spring to come and kind of excited to show you what else there is going on.